Welcome to the Mindful Healers podcast with
Dr. Jessie Mahoney
and Dr. Ni-Cheng Liang.
We are here to help you learn to pause and be present, awaken your breath, and harness the ripple effects of mindfulness for radiant health.
We get you. We know you. We are you.
We have both been successful on the surface, yet struggling underneath. We have both had cluttered brains, been overwhelmed, and exhausted.
We're healers who have found solutions and want to share them with you.
Join us here to discover a better way.
Welcome to the Mindful Healers podcast. Today's episode is about letting go of negative feedback and what other people think. And this is a podcast by request. And of note, we do take requests on topics. If you would like us to speak about something, please reach out. Another reminder that nothing that we bring up in our podcast should be construed as medical advice.
Our intention for today is to provide some helpful options to navigate when someone verbalizes or publishes their dislike of us, or basically also when we receive a negative review. You'll discover that it's normal to feel uncomfortable, sad, angry, frustrated when you receive negative feedback and reviews. But with mindfulness, self-compassion, and coaching, we can choose a response that is not so reactive, that can be more constructive, and ultimately healthier.
And our primary takeaway is that self-compassion is key to letting it go. Thinking it won't happen is a waste of energy and is resisting reality. And the story that we tell can change our experience of it. So this podcast, as I mentioned, came as a request. What can we do when patients or other people give one-sided negative opinions and or complaints about you and or your practice and or your parenting? When you cannot reply, how do you let it go? And so I always love to be transparent, and I will say that even with tons of coaching and tons of mindfulness, it's still hard to let it go. And I always find myself disappointed and upset at first because I care and I am human. And I imagine that that is true for so many of you. I always begin by accepting and allowing the upset, remembering that what we resist persists. And also allow that, of course, I want people to like me and appreciate me. And then remembering that, of course, they won't always. We talked about this about a year ago, that we can't be everyone's cup of tea, and our practice won't be everyone's cup of tea. And much of what they say is about them and not about us. So my first tip in addressing the situation and helping yourself let it go is actually digging into the hand to heart and the self-compassion and bringing that hand to heart and just having compassion for your humanity and the challenges of letting it go. And the very human response of feeling disappointed, rejected, sad, angry, frustrated, whatever it might be, allowing that initial response just to be and just to move through you, remembering that what we resist persists. So what else in your mindset and coaching toolbox can help beyond self-compassion? The next thought that I have is pause and breathe. We always want to react immediately. And so pausing and breathing and choosing a response when we are ready. And remembering that, of course, we want to defend ourselves. And many of us also would love to have the chance to correct any misperceptions. And very often, especially in the case of patient reviews or evaluations or something like that, we don't necessarily get that chance to correct ourselves. And so then what comes up is remembering that we can make up the narrative that we would like about it. We can decide that it's wrong, it's unfair, it's not right, and we can sit in the misery of that. Or we can look for if there are any truths in it, and or even the upside. So if you have a negative review, in amidst other reviews, then of course they are all real, right? It's not a made up review. And sometimes negative reviews can actually say something that you want. Like in my case, maybe I talk a lot about getting vaccines, or maybe you refuse to give them medicine, narcotics, and maybe that's good. And maybe the right fit patients will seek out your style. The other thing is that sometimes negative reviews actually have something useful in it, maybe a staff experience or wait times, or maybe something that you do want to work on or emphasize, or maybe in the way that you say things. We tend to take them very personally and make them a judgment of who we are and what kind of a physician we are. And so realizing that though perhaps it should be different, or perhaps the evaluation is not correct, or is not right, or is not fair, and your inability to respond is not fair, but you can still choose how you want to respond. So as I often say, it should be different, but I can still make a difference. Remembering once again that not everybody will like us. In fact, we don't actually like everyone. So bringing in that compassion that those people who are right fit, or those people who might be the most appropriate for our practice, maybe those people who see the world in ways that we do might be attracted to us if we sit in our own authentic, aligned way of moving forward. And remembering with kindness and softness that as people pleasers and people who don't like to be rejected, it's painful when someone doesn't like us, even if we don't necessarily love them or their energy. And then remembering that feedback of others is absolutely out of our control. It triggers our over responsibility tendencies. It triggers our desire to control things out of control. And remembering that all that is in our control is what we do, what we say, what we think and feel about it, and the tone and energy with which we do all of that. We can choose to stay out of catastrophizing. We can choose to remember that likely one review, or one patient changing a practice, or someone not agreeing with something you said, it very likely won't have an impact. 99% of the time, these things that we ruminate on and get so very hurt and upset about don't have any impact on our life at all. And at the same time, noticing and having compassion for our tendencies to feel inadequate, to blame, shame, and guilt ourselves when something doesn't go the way we had hoped, to notice that we are very sensitive to rejection. We tend to over-personalize. And I think that many of us really struggle to believe that it's not true. And we really struggle to believe that we have done our best, and we struggle to believe that we were adequate. We might define adequacy by everyone liking us. And so just remembering that the reality is, once again, that not everyone is going to like you. You are not going to be perfect, and that everyone gets to have their own down day, or their own bad day, or their own experience. And very often what people share is more about them than it is about you.
I wanted to share some real life examples. Being in active clinical practice, patients have sometimes chosen to transfer care. And the story I used to tell myself right away was that they had fired me, quote unquote, from being their physician. Also, when I'm notified about a complaint from the patient experience office, for instance, I used to take these situations super personally. My immediate reaction used to be, what did I do wrong to make them not like me? And then those old narratives still creep in a little bit, but my wiser response after doing the ongoing work of mindfulness and self-compassion has been one that's been much more expansive and abundant. Knowing that I've been a physician for over 18 years, I've taken care of thousands of human beings. Frankly, statistically speaking, it's impossible for all of those human beings to like me and approve of me. So if you stay authentic to yourself and you trust yourself as a good healer, We know actually that trying to please patients does not lead to better health outcomes. It's actually not healthy or to the benefit of those that we seek to heal when we try to please them. So, bringing in some data in the Archives of Internal Medicine, published in 2012, there was an article written by Fenton et al. Patients with the highest satisfaction scores did have lower odds of emergency room visits, but they had higher odds of inpatient admission, higher expenditures inclusive of drug expenditures, and higher mortality. So maybe when you are recommending a treatment plan, recognizing that you're basing this plan based off of years of experience, training, expertise, and ongoing learning that you're doing, and your patient doesn't agree with you, please recognize that you are already practicing evidence based care and recommending what you think is best for them, even if they don't agree with you. And as a result, there will definitely be some people that don't like this approach. And it's their right to have their own thoughts and actions about their healing journey.
I just love that concept and that there is some research behind it. And I think in medicine, we've turned so much towards patient satisfaction scores, and yet there's so much else beyond that to appropriate medical care and beautiful medical experiences. And as you mentioned, liking and approving. And they won't like and approve everything you do, even if you do the absolute best you can. I love to think about, well, if I like and approve of everything I do, that's all that's in my control. And I can, no matter what I do, I will likely disappoint some others. So I can choose to move through the world not disappointing myself. And what I mean by that is not being overly kind to myself or being selfish, but that as people who have trained to be physicians, almost always not disappointing ourselves is a very high standard of care and a tremendous amount of effort on behalf of our patients.
And liking and approving of yourself includes standing up for your own boundaries. So when I show up as a healer and I prioritize my own self care, when others, including patients, violate my boundaries, even if it upsets them and they become angry at me, and it's still hard for me to do this, I will fully admit, I have to hold fast to setting those boundaries, sometimes very firmly. And also, there's a whole nother layer added on top of this because I'm a minority woman of color in a male dominated specialty field. I definitely get backlash from going against people's stereotypes of what I should be behaving like. And sometimes that honestly does make me second guess myself. There's a lot of internalized racism that I am working through. But ultimately, I work through that muck of unlearning all those bad habits, those old habits of people pleasing and minimizing my own basic needs. And now instead, I choose to stand up for my own needs and my boundaries. So, a real life example, for instance, is the fact that a non urgent medical result does not warrant a phone call within 24 hours of that result to the patient. Because this phone call, as many of the phone calls and outside clinic visit correspondence that we all make as healers, is on our own time and it's not compensated. So some patients will definitely not like this. And I've had a patient become very angry with me and request to transfer care because I did not call this person within 24 hours of receiving a non-urgent result. And honestly, it's okay because I'd rather be devoting my energy and time to patients who actually do need me in more urgent circumstances. And then with regards to the online reviews, these days, I haven't prioritized and I'm choosing not to expend any more energy or any more of my precious time looking at online reviews.
So, one of the things that we wanted to offer in this podcast is tenets of mindfulness that can help you find your grounding. And as you mentioned, also set boundaries. I love to set boundaries from a place of love, love for myself, love for the practice of medicine, love for the health of humans. And when I come at it from a place of love, not from a place of punitiveness, boundary setting is much more effective for me. And when I come at all of these things, disappointments, frustration, sadness, worry, catastrophizing, from a place of grounding, that is where the change is most possible. And so mindfulness offers noticing, and noticing your habits and your thought patterns, and noticing your reactiveness, noticing your shift into shame, blame, and guilt. And then mindfulness offers the self-compassion and kindness and hand to heart that we talked about. Mindfulness also offers patience rather than urgency, taking time, gifting yourself space, and gifting yourself perspective. Mindfulness also offers acceptance. We can accept and not like it. We can accept and allow it. We can accept and hate it. We can accept and be sad. We can accept and be disappointed. But resisting reality does not help. Mindfulness also offers attention and intention. And how I like to frame this is, how do you want to show up for it? And likely you want to show up with ease and positivity, perhaps not ruminating. We may want to show up with non-judgment, which is another invitation of mindfulness. We can have non-judgment of the reviewer and the other human who perhaps would like to receive results quickly, and ourselves. We can also let go, and letting go is another tenet of mindfulness. And to me, letting go is the path to peace. Mindfulness also offers an invitation of curiosity. And this one is very helpful when you get into a spin or frustration, or you get triggered. And who knows why they wrote what they wrote? Who knows what their perspective is? Who knows what their thoughts are? And maybe, just maybe, it won't have an impact at all on anyone. The other intention of mindfulness that I really love is generosity. And to me, this is generosity of spirit, that this other person is likely struggling and suffering if they felt the need to share something negative about you. And so I like to assume that they are generally good people who had a bad day. And also to assume with generosity that perhaps it may not turn out badly. And so I love this concept of generosity in this setting as well. The last thing I wanted to reflect on is just this idea of character versus reputation. And I loved this concept because character is actually who you are. And that we can take seriously and hold tight, and it helps us connect with peace. And other people are not judging our character, and character is different than reputation. Reputation is what someone else thinks you are, or whatever version they have created about you in their mind. It's also a story. And when you connect to this ideas of stories, people can tell all kinds of stories. It doesn't make it true. And when I think about it that way, it allows you to hold the experience of negative reviews in a much lighter way.
I also want to put in a disclaimer that this is not to say to ignore statements that are clearly committing defamation, where there is falsehood in particular a negative online review. You are, of course, within your legal right to seek legal counsel in terms of protecting yourself against defamation. So I just want to put that out there, that there can be legal proceedings to help you with this as well, especially if it means to help you stay in alignment as a healer.
One thought I have here is connecting with your future self, because that can guide you. I think you are absolutely correct that we don't have to do nothing, and acting in integrity for ourselves is what's most important. And so asking your future self what you will wish you had done in this moment. Usually it's not ruminate, but it may be taking action in a different way, or it may not. It may be letting it go. Each and every circumstance will be different.
As always, we like to end our podcast with some reflection questions for you. What thoughts, feelings, body sensations are you noticing as you're encountering a situation where disapproval, unhelpful criticism has been expressed? We invite you to bring in what resonates from this podcast. Can you pause for a moment and validate your lived experience of this? Normalizing that for many people, discomfort arises. Inviting you to recount the clinical encounter and remember what you did well. Checking in with yourself. Did you stay true to yourself as a healer? What were your intentions for that encounter? Presenting your authentic self and recommending what you thought was best for your patient in a way that was in alignment for you? Can you allow the other person to have their own autonomy about their own thoughts and actions, even if it means judging you inaccurately? Noticing this discomfort as it arises. Is the expression of this dissatisfaction so harmful that you need to seek legal counsel or connecting with a friend or a mental health professional? Or you have the choice that you are deeming that the energy expenditure would not be worth your precious time and attention. You have a choice in your response.
Those reflection questions feel very much like a mindful moment that deserves a hand to heart at the end for the experience of receiving feedback and negative feedback sometimes, and also experiencing when people may not like or appreciate you, and that is part of being human and always a challenging, difficult experience for every human that I know. Thank you all so much for joining us and listening today. We hope that you have found some of these tips and tools helpful and grounding as you move forward. We wish you all peace, letting go, and moving forward with much compassion, kindness, and hand to heart.
As always, if you want to declutter your mind, be more present, and start truly living your one wild and precious life, come find us at the mindfulhealerspodcast.com.
Work with one of us.
Work with both of us.
Start or uplevel your mindfulness practice.
Discover how mindful coaching can change your life.
Or even better, do both as part of our Mindful Healers programs and retreats. You can find links to find out more about our programs and join our communities at themindfulhealerspodcast.com.
Reach out and get started on your journey to a life better lived today.
The content of this podcast is not meant to be medical or life advice. If you choose to participate in our mindful moments, please do so safely.